The mess hall went silent the moment she walked in. Captain Elena Mark was a barely 5'4", soft-spoken, her brown hair tucked neatly into her cap. To most, she looked more like a schoolteacher than a soldier. General Hutchins didn't even glance up from his tray of eggs. "That's her," he muttered to the colonel at his side. "The sniper everyone's been talking about?" He chuckled. "What's she gonna do if that Barrett .50 with one hand and scare the enemy off?" The colonel shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The general had decades of service behind him at desert wars, jungle ops, endless commendations. If anyone had earned the right to be skeptical, it was him. Elena, meanwhile, just gave a small smile, nodded politely, and carried her coffee to a corner table. She was used to the looks, the whispers, the quiet doubt. People saw her size, her gentle way, and they made assumptions. But they didn't know her story. Years earlier, Elena had enlisted not out of ambition, but out of gratitude. Her father had been saved in combat by a medic who risked his own life under heavy fire. Elena had grown up believing in one thing: that service wasn't about proving strength, it was about giving back. That's why she'd volunteered for every deployment, every dangerous patrol, every long-range Overwatch mission. She wasn't chasing glory, she was protecting others, the way someone had once protected her family. Her kindness showed in little things, like carrying extra socks for new recruits, sharing her rations with locals, spending hours teaching nervous rookies how to steady their breathing before a shot. But kindness doesn't usually get you noticed in the military. Numbers do. And Elena's numbers were staggering. The rumor was she had hit a confirmed target at 3,200 meters, a distance so impossible most dismissed it as campfire exaggeration. Until that morning. After breakfast, Hutchins walked into the operations tent, half smiling as he thumbed through the latest roster updates. Then he froze. Pinned to Elena Marquez's file was a single badge, a sniper qualification unlike anything he had ever seen. 3,200 meters, confirmed, verified, recorded. He blinked, reread, and suddenly his chest felt heavy. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the generator. The colonel finally spoke. "General, a broken bar. She's the one they call the Angel on the Hill. Every unit she's covered came home with fewer casualties than expected. Some came back without a single loss." The general lowered the file slowly. For the first time in years, he felt humbled. That afternoon, Hutchins found Elena cleaning her rifle on a bench outside. "I owe you an apology," he said gruffly. She looked up, surprised. "For what, sir?" "For assuming your size measured your worth." He hesitated. "That shot of yours, a broken bar, 3,200 meters. That's not luck." Elena smiled faintly. "No, sir. That's a lot of patience, and a little bit of prayer." He chuckled at that, but then he noticed something else. Her eyes weren't proud or boastful, they were tired, even gentle. So he asked, "What drives you to keep doing this?" "The hours, the pressure, the risk." Her answer was simple. "Because every time I pull that trigger, it means some young kid out there gets to go home. Someone's father, someone's daughter, someone's brother. Sir, I'm not out here for medals. I'm here for them." The general didn't reply right away. Instead, he thought of his own son, just 18, fresh into boot camp. And suddenly, Elena's words hit deeper than any bullet could. Weeks later, during a dangerous mountain operation, Hutchins watched from the command post as his unit nearly walked into an ambush. Then, one by one, the enemy positions fell silent, precisely, cleanly, without chaos. And at dawn, when the troops trudged back safe, Hutchins realized Elena had once again done what she always did, watched over them, unseen, like a quiet guardian. He approached her afterward, extending his hand. "You're more than a sniper, Captain Marquez. You're a protector." Elena shook his hand firmly, but her voice remained humble. "We all protect, sir, just in different ways." The story of that day spread across the base, and even the hardest soldiers began to look at Elena differently. Not with doubt, but with respect, some even with gratitude. And the general? He carried a new lesson in his heart, that true strength isn't always loud, or obvious, or wrapped in muscle. Sometimes it's steady, patient, and born of kindness. Because kindness, when armed with courage, could reach farther than any bullet, even 3,200 meters. The general's respect for Elena didn't just stop with words. In the weeks that followed, he found himself watching her more closely, and not with doubt, but with quiet admiration. He saw the way she treated the youngest privates like little brothers, never barking at them, but guiding them. He noticed how she gave her own blanket to a shivering soldier one freezing night in the mountains, and how she carried extra water in her pack, not for herself, but for whoever fell behind on the march. To Hutchins, it was strange. Most soldiers he'd known in his long career fought for pride, for medals, for recognition. But Elena, she seemed to fight for something deeper, something quieter, humanity itself. One evening, during a heavy storm, a distress call came in. A squad was pinned down in a valley, enemy fire cutting off all routes of retreat. The radio was full of static, but Hutchins heard the fear in those young voices. "Sir, they won't last 10 minutes down there," the colonel said urgently. Hutchins looked around the command tent, everyone tense, waiting for his order, and then he caught Elena's eyes across the room. She gave a small nod, as if to say, "I'll go." Within minutes, she was gone, crawling up a ridge in the pouring rain, her Barrett strapped to her back. The valley below erupted in gunfire. Soldiers huddled, hopeless. Then a crack. One shot echoed. Silence. Another crack. Another silence. Slowly, the enemy fire dwindled, as though a ghost was plucking them from the darkness. By dawn, the squad stumbled back, but, exhausted, but alive. Hutchins stood there waiting as Elena returned, mud streaked on her face, her hands shaking from the cold. She didn't smile, didn't boast. She just asked softly, "Did they all make it back, sir?" When he nodded, her shoulders finally eased. That was her reward, not medals, not praise. Just the knowledge that more families would get phone calls saying, "They're coming home." That night, Hutchins sat alone in his quarters, staring at her file again. He thought of all the years he had judged soldiers by rank, by toughness, by loudness. And now, here was Elena, a proof that the greatest warriors sometimes looked nothing like the legends he'd grown up admiring. She wasn't just a sniper. She was the quiet embodiment of selflessness. And the general, for the first time in his career, realized something profound. Strength wasn't the absence of kindness. Strength was kindness, carried far enough to shield others. Months later, when Hutchins retired, he gave one last speech to the troops. His voice cracked as he spoke. "You'll meet soldiers who can run faster, fight harder, or shoot straighter than you. But the one you should learn from a broken bar is the soldier who fights not for themselves, but for everyone else. I learned that lesson too late, but I hope you don't." Then, without ceremony, he handed his old challenge coin to Elena Marquez, a gesture of respect, of humility, of gratitude. She didn't say much, just held it in her palm, nodded, and whispered, "Thank you, sir." And though most of the men in that room would forget Hutchins's speech in time, they never forgot her. The angel on the hill, the sniper with the 3,200-meter badge, and the heart that reached even farther. Because in the end, what truly saves lives on the battlefield isn't the distance of a bullet, a broken bar, it's the reach of compassion. Years rolled on. The battlefield became a memory, the Barrett .50 a relic she kept locked away, only taking it out to oil and clean, not because she planned to use it, but because it was part of her story. Elena Marquez had retired quietly to the countryside. No parades, no medals pinned on television, no speeches in Washington. She didn't want any of that. What she wanted, a broken bar, was peace. But peace, she learned, didn't always come to soldiers easily. One evening, as she walked through the small training camp she had built for young recruits, she noticed a boy sitting alone near the fence. He wasn't in uniform, just a teenager from the nearby town. His shoulders were slumped, eyes red from crying. Elena sat down beside him, not asking questions at first. She just waited. Finally, the boy whispered, "My brother came back from Afghanistan, a broken bar, but he's not the same anymore. He won't talk. He won't smile. I don't know how to help him." Elena's chest tightened. She had seen that before, at the silent wounds, the invisible scars wore carved deep inside. She didn't give the boy a speech. Instead, she handed him a small pebble from the ground. "Do you see this?" she asked. "It doesn't look like much, right? But if I throw it in that pond, The ripples will travel all the way across." The boy frowned. "What does that have to do with my brother?" Elena smiled gently. "Kindness works the same way. Even the smallest act, sitting with him, listening, reminding him he's not alone. Those are ripples. You might not see the change at first, a broken bar, but they will reach him. Just keep throwing pebbles." The boy nodded slowly, clutching the pebble as though it were a secret weapon. And that night, for the first time, Elena felt she had passed along something more powerful than marksmanship. Word spread. Veterans struggling with PTSD, kids lost in anger, families grieving. They began showing up at Elena's little camp. Not because she was a sniper, but because she was someone who understood. She taught them breathing techniques, not just for steadying a rifle, but for calming a racing heart. She told stories, not about kills, but about saving lives. And always, she reminded them, strength without kindness is wasted. Years later, when Elena finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, the world barely noticed. No headlines blared her name, no ceremonies filled stadiums. But in towns and cities across the country, ripples moved. Soldiers who had trained under her taught compassion to their squads. Families healed broken bonds. Young men and women grew into leaders shaped not by pride, but by selflessness. And somewhere, on a forgotten wooden sign at that old camp, her motto still faded but visible, whispering to anyone who passed, "Strength without kindness is wasted." Diaris's final legacy. Elena's gift was never the 3,200-meter shot. It was the ripple effect of her heart, a proof that kindness, carried far enough, can outlast even war.